Welcome back to the Charlie Star podcast, where we dive into all things meta, witchy, new age, astrological, alternative, and spiritual. So today we have, back by popular demand, drumroll please, Nyanda. And Nyanda, this episode is one that actually my clients have specifically asked for, which is to talk about alien abductions. It's kind of something that you talked about a little bit in our podcast where you were sharing about being a starseed. If our listeners haven't listened to that, it's our episode 1. It's episode 1, right? Is it episode 1 or 2? I think it's episode 1. You talk a little bit about it too, also in episode 2, but it wasn't the feature, and you have whet the appetites of our listeners. So they want to know more about alien abductions and your experience with that.
Okay, perfect. Where do I start with that?
You have talked to me a lot about aliens, but I didn't know that you'd had an alien abduction until I sent you that video where this girl was talking about her alien abduction. And then you were like, oh yeah, something about yours.
Yes.
So like, when did you explain?
So first, let me explain. Yeah. All right. So number one, I've never been physically abducted by aliens. Okay. I have been paralyzed by them. I have had dreams of me being abducted in the past before. I have seen, like, I talk about the end of civilizations and everything like that. So have I had multiple situations where I know I've been abducted before in past? Yes. Yes, I have been abducted in the past. Have I been abducted in this life specifically? No, but I could tell you about a lot of cool shit that has happened physically that I will talk about later. But I can definitely expound on the abductions from the past. Yeah. I was raised a Jehovah's Witness, right? So after I had left as a Jehovah's Witness and I started having the dreams about the alien abduction and things of that nature, I had just started learning that, if you meditate, you can actually go deeper into your subconscious and actually retrieve past life memories, right? Cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to go retrieve a past life memory, and the memory that I had, it was the entire world. There was like fireballs coming down from the sky. It didn't look very different from our world now. Like, there were buildings, there were homes, everything of that nature. But what I was doing was I was trying to warn people that they needed to leave, or they needed to do something. And it was giving me the nature like I was a prophetess or something of that. You know what I'm saying? It was giving me that kind of vibe. But what ended up happening was everything was ending, everything was falling apart, and I was running and rushing. I was trying to save people, I was trying to warn them, get them to safety. Like, I was literally physically running. And then I saw there was a spacecraft that came down from the sky, and it was looking very specifically for me. It had like little searchlight you see on fucking helicopters and whatnot. It was searching for me. And the emotions that I had felt did not feel like fear, like, oh my God, a spacecraft is going to abduct me. It gave me the vibe of my family's coming back to get me, and I don't want them to get me. Right? It was like I saw them and I expected them to come. And I was like, oh shit, I gotta keep going. And I started running even faster. And I'm like, no, we gotta do A, B, and C. And what ended up happening was that as I was running, I was frozen in what is the tractor beam, whatever the fuck it's called. I was frozen mid stride. And then I was like snatched up into it. And it very much gave me the energy of like an upset father. I was like, we've been looking for you all day, and we told you not to leave, and you're going and you're leaving anyway. And we told you that there was nothing you could do to help these people. That was the first time. The second time was actually in a dream. I had fallen asleep. It had taken a nap, right? And sometimes I'll take a nap on purpose because I want to get a message by the dream state. So at that point in time, I had taken a nap, and it was after I'd had my first past life reading, right? So the alien abduction one, that one that I had, this one came before that. This is a dream, though. The dream that I had, I was in a pyramid. It was very clearly by the shape of the walls in a pyramid shape, right? And there were inscriptions on the wall. The walls were black, but the inscriptions were gold. And I was sitting in a chair, and my boyfriend was sitting next to me, right? And there was this loud booming voice coming from behind me, And it was explaining like secrets of life or spiritual secrets or something of that nature. But I can't tell you right now what the fuck was said to me because I was just focused on the fact that I was paralyzed. Right.
Yeah.
And the booming nature of the voice made it sound like what you would imagine a god would sound like. So my boyfriend, he was like, "Is that God?" And I was like, "I don't think so." And then I was pulling and I was trying to get out of the paralysis, right? And I think the voice told me something of like, "You can't look at me," or something like that, right? And I was like, "The hell I fucking can't." And and eventually somehow I ended up breaking out of the paralysis. And then I went to go turn around, and I kid you not, Charlie, as I turned around, I woke up. My boyfriend had body slammed me in like the actual physical realm. He body slammed me, and I woke up. And I was like, "Fuck, Keith!" And he was like, "What?" And I'm like, "I was just about to find out who was talking to us in the pyramid." And he was like, "Huh?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I had a dream." And I told him the dream. And then I told him, looking in retrospect, as I'm telling the story, it was probably for my safety. But I was just like, I told him the story. And then I had finally broken out of it. And there were no chains, no ropes, no nothing. I just couldn't fucking move. We were sitting in chairs and I couldn't move. And I
Oh
was like,
my
and by the
God.
time I was about to turn around, you woke me up. And he was like, oh, I was really upset, Charlie. Like, I was like, why the fuck would you do that? And he was like, how would I know what was going on? And I'm like, oh, yeah, that's fair. My bad. Hold on, let me breathe. Um, that was that experience. Another experience I had was before I had went to go. It was either I was going to take one of those little lucid dreaming naps or I was going to go meditate. I don't remember because I've been through a lot recently and I haven't been able to do that as much recently. But I was like, oh, I need a message again. Cool. So I go under. I call it going under. I don't know if you call it that too. I tell Keith, I'm like, I'm about to go under. I went under, and I was at my great grandma's house. She passed away. May she rest in peace. And I said to my guides, I'm like, I want to see you guys. Like, I want to actually see you. I want to know what you look like. I want to know what you're about, right?
Mm.
So I go under, and then I'm back at my grandma's house in Eastside Tacoma, and I was like, oh shit, I'm in Eastside. Okay, we back in the ghetto. And I didn't know why I was there. I shouldn't say that. I didn't know I was there. And then suddenly there's these flashing lights like beaming through the window. And then this spacecraft lands in front of our neighbor's house across the street. And I see it clear as day out the window. And then I see people like looking around at it, looking at it, they're interested. And then they all start like, going in, coming out, going in, coming out. And I'm not even gonna fuck with you, Charlie. I saw it and I was like, that's enough. Yep. And then I heard somebody say, well, do you want to go inside? I was like, no, I'm good. And I'm not
Whoa.
sure if I had any trauma pertaining to going inside of the spacecraft, but I had seen it. I could draw it for you. Like it was so clear. And then I probably should have made a connection about my grandma at that point in time, but I didn't until recently. Either way, I saw it and I was like, they're like, you want to go inside? You said you wanted to see. And I was like, eh? I think I'm good. I think I'm good. That's all I needed to know. Thank you. I'm gonna get the fuck up and go on with the rest of my day. Um, then another dream I had. I'm mixing up the dreams and the visions, but another dream that I had. I was in an apartment and it was me and my cousin and my boyfriend. And then we were given instructions by somebody that we were not to leave the apartment. We had to stay in that apartment. And this is probably the precursor to the one where I got abducted and snatched the fuck up, right? And I was like, in the dream, I had been aware that something was happening where people were going to die or people were dying. And I had said, well, we need to go and help people. And then they said that these people are beyond helping. Like, there's nothing you can do to be able to help them. You just need to help yourself, right? Which now looking at my life, okay, bitch, all right, fine, whatever. Anyway, so I was just kind of like, but no. And then they were like, well, if you really want to know the true state of the world, you can look up the peephole. We'll let you see that much, right? Okay, cool. I go to the peephole and then I see the same fireballs like crashing down into the earth and the entire earth being on fire and everything of that nature. And in that dream, I didn't go outside. I just kind of looked outside and I saw what was happening. And then I was like, okay, well, I guess that's what it is then. And then I ended up just kind of going back to the living room and just sitting there and waiting. Um, and then we could go into other when I meditated and I saw, I don't know if it was Atlantis. I don't want to say it was Atlantis, but I've had other visions of different realms, different worlds, things of that nature, where it's like you can definitely tell this either isn't Earth or it's not a part of Earth that people are familiar with. And they're all very interesting, but anyway.
Okay, thank you for I feel like this gives me like a much better understanding of your experiences. Like just to hear you share like, in like a linear fashion, like your dreams, your visions, your like, the path that you went on in like understanding your like connection to aliens.
Yeah.
So okay, so cool. So you didn't have a physical alien
No, I've
abduction
never
in
been
this life
physically abducted.
that you know of. That you know of, right? Because isn't it a thing that they give you? And this is with the video that I watched that they give you like some pyramid that makes you forget
Yes,
or
I've been told
something.
of that. Yeah. There's a lot of
Yeah.
different things that they do to make you forget. Sometimes they won't make you forget, but more often than not, they will. Typically, because when they bring you up, number one, sometimes they'll bring you up to heal you. A lot, there's like Hollywood has kind of demonized extraterrestrials and things of that nature. A lot of these species are here to help, right? They're much older than all of us. Like they've seen the same things that we've gone through, they've gone down the same paths, they've died from it before, they've been destroyed from it or been attacked or gone through wars and countless wars over the same shit that we're doing, right?
Yeah.
And a lot more of them are here to help. Some of them aren't necessarily here to help. Now, what I have seen in the physical is some of my spirit guides outlines. Like, if you believe in, like, okay, I won't go into what you believe. These are just what my experiences are. So, one
Okay.
time I was laying in my apartment and I was like, I could feel somebody was in the room. And I was like, well, I wish you would just show yourself, right? And then I started to see this outline, which the only thing that I could equate it to was, like the invisibility the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter. Like how you could kind of see a little bit of an outline, but not really much of anything to be able to see. It was like that.
Mm,
And I
mm.
began seeing an outline of it was a very tall being, and then very clearly I remember seeing a wagging tail. Now, what I also know about my guides is half of them are like humanoid lion or feline species, but I saw them start to materialize, and then I started seeing that wagging tail. And when I saw the height and I saw the shape, I was like, okay, that's enough. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. And then slowly it started to fade away. Then the other thing I saw when I woke up one time was, and it wasn't like, oh, I'm like in the middle of dream state and whatever. No, I was wide awake. I woke up and then there was a lion head. Like it was literally like a hologram. How you see them in Star Wars? A hologram. And there was a lion head and she looked over at me and she had like this headdress on. It was like a red and gold headdress, or red and yellow. It was like a red and gold headdress. And she didn't say anything. She just looked at me. Like, and she made it clear we were looking at each other and then faded away. And then the next day after that, I was working at Crescent Moon at this time too. The day after that, I had woken up and I had seen, like, if you are familiar with the Bible, and there's like a story in the Bible where God like writes his name in midair and everybody sees it, right? That happened to me, but it was it had to be an alien language of some sort, and I saw it being written in midair. And I don't know exactly what. Oh, did you get another one? Okay. I didn't know what it had said, obviously, because I don't read that shit, but I had never seen any writing like that before. Um, Another time I was told, if you want to, I think I told Charlie about a lot of these. If you want to help your manifestations happen, you need to, instead of, because I dance a lot, they're like, instead of rotating your hips counterclockwise, rotate them clockwise, right? And I was like, okay. That was a little bit uncomfortable for me because I'm not used to working those muscles on that side, right?
Hmm.
Girl, I went and I did it, and the entire apartment filled up with these like, it was like royal blue and like opalescent. It was just, I don't know how to describe them, but like if you've ever seen like Avatar, and when they get back to that magic tree or whatever the fuck it's called, and they're like surrounded by all those balls, that filled my apartment. And I was
Whoa.
like, whoa. And I couldn't touch them, but they were everywhere in the apartment. It was like 2 minutes. They like filled the entire apartment everywhere. And then I was like, I got really excited. I'm not gonna lie to you. I was like, oh my God, what is this? Because I'd kind of gotten used to the weird shit at that point, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, that
It's
is
still
so cool.
exciting though when it happens. Like I will say, it doesn't
It
really get
is.
old
It
to
is.
have your like psychic experiences confirmed in the 3D. Like it doesn't get old.
And then there was another time. that I was coming to these conclusions. Now, this is when the whole like people throwing black magic at me shit started, right? And I, at that time, the constellation of Sirius was right outside of my window for a little bit. And I have the night sky app, and I remember them telling me, do you think that you're stronger than us? Like, you keep getting in the ring with these people. Do you think that you're not protected? Because if you don't think you're protected, we'll let you get in the ring. And you could try to fight it off if you want to, or you could leave it to us and we could just handle it. And I was like, and I still didn't learn that lesson up until very recently. Okay. But anyway, I was talking to Keith in my old apartment, and I was like, so what? We just have fucking aliens watching over us. All of the lights in the apartment turned off and turned back on again. I'm not even kidding. And it was like a bing and then off. Or it was like, you know what I'm saying? And then I was
Yeah,
like, are you fucking serious? And then it did it again. And I was like, oh
that's
my
too
God, we have
funny.
aliens watching after us. And then there was at one point I was coming to these conclusions about different spiritual teachers and their
Yeah,
roots. Like a lot of people don't know this. Jesus, when he was a child, he grew up in Egypt for a little bit. And you know how you talk about like the Greek deities going to Egypt, obviously the Egyptian deities, everybody going to Egypt. Um, I was coming to certain conclusions about certain spiritual teachers or gurus, or whatever the fuck it was, right? And every time I had come to the conclusion that might have been semi accurate, the TV would turn on. It was 2 o'clock in the morning, pitch fucking black. The TV would turn on. And I would be in my room, a totally different room, and I could see the light beaming in from under the door. I'd go outside, the TV was on. And then I was like, okay, that's weird. I turned it off. And then I kept talking about it. And I was like, yeah, then that has to mean that A, B, and C is true too. TV turned on again by itself. And I'm talking about all
wow.
the alien shit. And I'm like, okay, so then essentially what you're saying is that humanity has to do A, B, and C for A, B, and C to happen. The TV turns on again. I'm like, okay, all right, that's enough for me. I got what I needed to know.
Yeah,
So it's like the understanding of the physical reality of them is kind of overwhelming. Um, Especially because then you have to sort through your feelings about like extraterrestrials and what their purpose is and what they want from you, and you know what I'm saying, and the fact that they've been here for a very long time.
yeah, yeah,
But yeah.
yeah. What their purpose is, what they want. That was so. Yesterday, I went on a walk with my partner, and he has been obsessed with aliens his whole life. Like, and his family has too. Like, he was telling me he used to tease, like him and his brothers used to tease their dad because they'd be like, "You want to get probed by an alien so bad," you know,
Right.
because I guess his dad just kind of had this like fantasy of being abducted by an alien. Whoa, and I was just thinking about that, like maybe it happened to him at one point. I don't know. But anyway, he was like kind of obsessed with the topic. And so for a while, like I want to say last year, maybe earlier this year, um, like my partner and I watched like a whole bunch of documentaries about alien abductions. And we like I also listened to like different podcasts where other people shared their like alien abduction stories. Like there was this other one where this guy found like a spacecraft, and of course in all these experiences, like the people that are having these experiences, they're made out to be crazy. So it's kind of like you can't win because like everyone says like, oh well, if it was real, then we would have like, you know, physical evidence and people would da 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 da. And it's like, well, we do have physical evidence and people do actually da 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 da. But then when they
Right.
come forward about it, then they're made out to be crazy, you know?
Exactly.
So like, but my partner was saying like, well, what do they want? Like, why are they abducting people? But like nobody seems to get hurt, right? Like it's kind of
Right.
like somebody will get taken and then returned, like no harm
Exactly.
done,
Right.
and so and a lot of people like don't remember a lot of what happened while they were abducted, but they'll remember some of it. They'll have flashbacks and blah blah blah, so it's funny because it was like, what are they looking for? There is something going on with the deities, especially the old gods and goddesses, um and aliens coming down to our earth, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to like understand that there's like a connection between those two things, and that a lot of the like what people worshipped as gods and goddesses, deities, um were aliens
Right.
and are aliens.
Yes. Yes, and also what we define as aliens as well, because essentially what an alien is, if we take away the Hollywood portion of it, right? Or an extraterrestrial, I guess, because we have our own contemporary definition of aliens as well. But an extraterrestrial is just somebody that's from a place that's different from here, right? Which essentially, like I always tell people, statistically speaking, it only makes sense. Like literally, it only makes sense that there would be some other beings with how random our existence was. Thank you. Keith just bought me a hot cocoa.
Aw.
But essentially, there's no way that there was a big bang and that only one planet in this entire fucking, even just the solar system, but outside of the solar, like our universe, that only we would be the living creatures that were. You know what I'm saying? Like that doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense, especially if you look at the lifetime of the universe compared to our actual planet's lifetime and how long it took for us to develop, according to what we have, like physically as physical evidence. But it only makes sense that there would be beings from a different place or beings from a different area or whatever like that. The issue is how did they make it here when we can't even seem to make it out of our own fucking, we can barely make it off the planet. We can barely make it past the moon, much less, right? Go to some other planet or a different area. But you know what I'm talking about. But that doesn't mean that other beings or other sentient beings can exist, right? Intelligent beings can exist. That just means that we haven't been smart enough or consistent enough to be able to figure it out, right? Maybe in other lifetimes or in other places, they prioritize different things to where they could travel the way that they do, or they could come to Earth, if they could connect with us, right? But it's just so hard for us to even fathom that as real because, to be clear with you, I do feel like a lot of humanity is being distracted from the reality of the Earth. I mean, climate change, we can't even get people to gather like in the same consensus about what to do about helping the climate, right? Much less talk to you about other species being existent that are just as intelligent and capable of communication and from a different place, right? All of these things make sense according to nature, but how in touch with nature are we as a species, as human beings? That's the bigger issue, in my opinion, because if we were more connected to nature, we'd understand, like ancient societies understood, that obviously, because even if you read the Quran, right, the Quran talks about evolution to a certain degree. A lot of these spiritual texts talk about different species or different beings or the birth of the universe. But our contemporary society has really, in my opinion, made it a point to discredit all of those ancient texts so that we would be very basic in our understanding of our existence, right? Um, I'm not going to go into my suspicions as to why that is. But what I will
Hmm.
say is, like, even our understanding of what a god is, right? What is a god? What is a deity? What is a higher level energy? Is very limited according to our understanding of nature. If I were to tell you that evolution expands past the physical sense, right? Most people understand that, right? When we talk about
Hmm.
immortality, or deification or whatever the case might be, we don't really talk about shit like that. We don't even take that into consideration. Some people consider it shameful to consider yourself equal to a god or to be able to reach that status or anything of that nature. But what is a god? We haven't even reached that definition yet. If we could get to that definition, then maybe we could go beyond that. And that's kind of where I see humanity stagnating to a certain degree. And I feel like it's mainly because we have disconnected ourselves from nature so much to where we even disconnected nature and science, or I'm sorry, science and spirituality, which spirituality is just science undiscovered, right? Like before we knew the science behind creating a fire, it was just a miracle, right? Then
Mm-hmm.
after we learned the science behind it, then it wasn't as it's still miraculous. It's just we understand how it works. But we've kind of regressed, at least in my opinion, in terms of our understanding of nature. Maybe understanding of, I don't really know, because we have evolved, but we haven't really fully evolved, in my opinion, to where this shit should just make sense to us, right? Like we don't have to fully get it, but we should be able to contact and interact with these beings and be able to retrieve information to help ourselves evolve without being scared of it or without thinking like, oh, that's outlandish. But it's really hard for us to fathom because we've really been disconnected from nature. Half of us are reconnecting to nature, even by means of our spirituality. Talking about extraterrestrials seems kind of advanced, right? It's not, but it feels like it because it's like, okay, that's a totally different ballgame. Well, is it? That's the
Mm.
question.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, it's deep as hell. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, it's really deep. But it's not at the same time. Like, at least to me, I feel like it just makes sense. It's just like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
Because if you look even like at the Dark Ages, we were being forbidden from even reading these texts, right? Maybe just in the West. I haven't fully gone into like the world history during the Dark Ages because, to be quite clear with you, I live in a Western country. So the
Right.
history that's promoted over here is Western culture, Western history, right? But let's just go
Yeah.
into that. Like the Dark Ages, there was a certain point in time where everybody, not everybody, because not everybody was so inclined, right? But as far as like spirituality was concerned, or spiritual texts were concerned, we were very much invested in learning the meanings behind them, right? The science behind, the mathematics behind them, what it means for us both in our connection to God, the gods, spirit, our ancestors, whatever the fuck it was, as well as science. We were integrating both of them, right? Because
Yeah.
if you look at it, people still to this day, oh, the Bible talks about the creation of the universe, the Quran talks about the creation. We all say it, right? We all try to connect it back to science until it gets too close for comfort. And then it's like, well, no, because I want this to be miraculous. It's still a miracle. It's still beautiful, right? And the aliens, to be quite clear with you, they don't fully understand everything either. But they've evolved to a certain degree to where certain things come second nature to them because they made that effort, right? They made that effort to understand it. They made that effort to integrate it into their actual society to where they can even make it to our planet or our solar system in one piece, right? So
Yeah.
when we think about it, or like the gods, are the gods aliens? Are they not? Well, who knows? We still have to figure that out ourselves. What I can tell you for sure is that any sort of not, let me not say any sort. I studied predominantly the Egyptian or the Kemetic system, right? It all ties back to aliens. Africa, a lot of like traditional indigenous African religions tie back to aliens. Like I told you about Mali, the Dogon tribe, right? And how they had extensive, detailed maps of the Sirius star system and of our solar system without having any access to technology or media or anything of that nature. And who did they accredit it to? They accredit it to the Syrians. They call them the Nomo, right? These aquatic or amphibious beings that essentially came out of the water and told them these things. And they even pinpointed a star that modern day astrologers, I'm sorry, modern day astronomers hadn't found until way later. And they didn't believe them. They just discredited it like, oh, okay, well, that star doesn't exist because we didn't find it. Then they found
Mm.
it and they're like, shit. But how would you know that? And that's the point. It's like we're so insistent upon, we even talk about it in the twin flame thing, trying to make it make sense, but we're giving ourselves too much credit. Let's start there, right? It's like we're giving ourselves too much credit. It's like we haven't really gotten as far as we possibly could have. I always argue, had the Dark Ages not happened, right? But everything happens for a reason. Every species has their own history for a specific reason. It teaches a lesson. Um, but there's lots of stories from a lot of ancient civilizations that do talk about these star people, these people from different places that were different from us, but that gave us wisdom. But for us, we're naturally inclined to kind of smack it down. And I truly believe it's because there's some ulterior motive. But that could just be my Scorpio placements being paranoid by nature. But I'm just like, but I just think of all of the things, all of the diseases, viruses, and things that could be healed if we actually prioritized science, right? Or we prioritized integrating science and spirituality together and using them both as compasses to get what we want. You could see what we've been able to accomplish by integrating the spiritual with the physical, right? There's a lot of
Mm.
miraculous things that you can do. Now, if we were to take that into contemporary society and say, okay, well, let's go back to this text and see, okay, this text talked about a flood and this text talked about a flood. All these ancient texts talking about a flood. Well, we in our anthropological research have found that there was a rising of the sea levels at a certain point in time, or there was a period in time where there was a bunch of volcanoes that went, you know what I'm saying? It's like they do align
Huh?
with each other, but we don't want to do that. And we don't want to do that for why? I don't really know. I have my suspicions that I won't say on the podcast, but afterwards we could talk about it. But it's just really interesting to me that aliens and extraterrestrials is such an outlandish, like damn near foolish or crazy thing to think about when evolution is crazy enough on its own. You know what I'm saying? Evolution doesn't
Yeah.
make sense. But it doesn't make sense maybe because we haven't gotten far enough to be able to understand it. But the difference between us now and us back in the day is I feel like we had the humility to be able to say we haven't gotten there yet. Right? Whereas now it's like, oh, well, if we didn't get there, it means it's not real. And that's not
Mm-hmm.
true. Because when you say it's not real, then you kind of cut yourself off. You cut your research off, you cut your curiosity off, you cut everything off, and you limit your knowledge. Down
Right.
to the point where people are like even don't want to believe in like the spirit realm, like ghosts and shit. Like that obviously exists. Like we all know it exists. Like, okay, if I were to tell you that your grandma's here in spirit, you don't believe that. But if she died, okay, she's in heaven and she's a guardian angel. What's the difference? What's the difference between what I said and what you said? Um, but anyways, I will talk your ear off if you let me. I just realized that.
No, I'm learning that first of all, you're schooling me and you're making a lot of connections. Like, and I feel like actually if I just let you talk, then I understand more than if I try to like interject with, some connection that I have to what you're saying.
Well, I mean, honestly, I like the connections because it makes it easier for me to understand. Because for me, and I tell people this all the time, I've never had the opportunity to ground myself in anything else, right? It's like as soon as I had my awakening, it was this. That was it. There was no chance for me to study or get comfortable with anything else. It was just, this is what you are, this is what it is, this is what we're doing. So for
Yeah.
me, it's just so second nature that even Keith the other day, he had to kind of like pull me back and be like, hey, babe, I know this is real for us, but it's not real for everybody, right? It's not that it's not real for everybody, but this is coming as second nature for you because you didn't have not the chance, but they didn't really let you get far enough to be able to have that kind of confusion. It's kind of like as soon as you came, they were there. Like as soon as you had your spiritual awakening, they were there. And they're like, yep,
Right.
here it is. We're your ancestors. We're this, and this is what it is, right? But
Yeah.
for other people, it's kind of hard. And I don't feel like it's hard like in a bad way. I feel like everybody has their path for their reason. Like for you, right? You have an extensive knowledge of astrology, in my opinion, at least, right? An extensive knowledge of the Greek pantheon, extensive of a bunch of shit, right? And then they're throwing this little monkey wrench in there for you for it to be able to connect. But I always feel like it's easier for people like that if they're willing to open their mind to it, because then you can just make connections like, oh, okay, I can see how that connects. Whereas for me, it's like, what the fuck am I talking about? Like, and my
Mm.
family is obsessed with aliens as well. That's also a thing. Very obsessed with aliens. Also superheroes. But that's a different topic for a different day. But yeah, when it comes down to it, I feel like we're all just fundamentally very disconnected from nature. And a lot of people, now that more people are kind of getting into spell work, or at least something that I've noticed is that more people are trying to get into energy manipulation or trying to learn about manifestation and things of that, but they're still not attributing the science behind it. But that's because they're still not used to linking science and spirituality yet. And it might take a
Yeah.
while for us to get there, right? So they'll like I think I said the other day, they'll be like, oh, you just have to have faith. Well, for me, faith is confidence. That's what faith is, right? And we all get confidence from different things. For me personally, I get confidence from physical evidence. And maybe that's the reason why I'm going through it the way that I am. But for other people, it's like, oh, I just need it's a feeling, right? It's a feeling. You just have to feel that it's coming. Well, there's a reason behind that, but we haven't gotten to the reason why yet, right? Once we get to the reason why or the science behind it, then everybody's going to know it. But then is there a danger to everybody knowing it? Maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. We tend to focus on the negative. But the purpose of
Right.
alien connections in our life, or if you are so blessed to have them even want to reach out to you, because I've met a lot of people that they do not want to talk to. Um, there some of these ancient energies can get really funny, at least in my experience, with who they want to deal with. My guides are not very patient. They're really funny though, but they're not patient. They're very like to the point. It's like either you get it or you don't, bitch. Like, are you on board? Are you coming? Let's go. Are you not on board? Okay, then don't bother. But um when it comes to dealing with these ancient energies, a lot of people want to act like, oh, extraterrestrials are like new age. It's not new age. That makes no sense. We're talking about evolution and science, right? So evolutionarily
Mm.
speaking, that would make sense because that means that they're much older than us. That means that everything that we know that they've taught us is what they learned in their own societies and their own planet, star system, whatever the fuck it is. And they're so gracious to
Hmm.
share it with us, right? But for
Yeah.
us, it's like we're so caught up in the Hollywood, the oh, it can't be real, or oh, that doesn't make sense. Well, you haven't gotten there technologically speaking, so of course it doesn't make sense. But you can have faith in A,
Yeah.
B, and C though.
Right.
You
I
know?
think I think you make such a good point when you talk about us getting like out of touch with nature. And I think about that a lot with like how our society has become more and more and more city dweller
Hmm.
people, and like how statistically there's going to be even more. Like I was looking at a trajectory for like the next 10, 20 years or something, and it was talking about like already we have, I wish I had the statistics in front of me, but it was like basically 90% of the people living in a city. And we only have like 10% of the people that are like living out in the country. You know, if you've ever taken a road trip across the US, you can see it. You're driving through land, 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 gas station, land, 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 land.
No,
You know what I
literally.
mean? So you
Right.
get to a city, and it's like, you know, over 90% of the land is not inhabited by people. And then you have all these people crammed into buildings that are so close to each other that like you're lucky if you have trees in there. Like
Right.
we're so out of touch with nature. And then, you know, the divorce between science and spirituality, 100%. It's like people are afraid of spirituality or mock it because it hasn't been yet scientifically proven. And like you were saying, it's the arrogance.
Yeah.
And, you know, there it can be some other reasons too. But and then I think also there becomes like a stigma, you know, of going that way, of seeing those things. And I always think too about how science is only one path to knowing something. There's other ways of knowing information. So to limit yourself to saying no, we only know what science has then proven. Um, that's really, you know, that's extremely limiting your experience and your knowledge base. And I think it makes so much sense when you're talking about like the extraterrestrials. Like for you, you haven't had like a physical abduction. You've had things physically happen to you, and you know that you've had physical experiences with aliens in the past, but like not having a physical abduction. However, they are still talking to you telepathically all the time. It's like, well, of course, like because like telepathy is one of those forms of communication that is still considered, you know, metaphysical or spiritual or not
Right.
scientific. And so, like, if you're not going to open yourself up to the fact that telepathy is a real and valid way of communicating, because that's going to be like over in the stigmatized spiritual area, you're really limiting yourself in like getting in touch with aliens and understanding them, because you're saying, no, I don't accept that as
Right.
a way to experience truth. Like, so, I mean, I don't know exactly where I was trying to say with that, but it just, I completely agree with you. We're getting really out of touch with nature and also the science behind some spiritual phenomenons. So this was something I was talking about yesterday with Jonathan, my partner, because I ended up telling him the story of a miraculous healing that I had when I was a teenager. And I had a physical healing instantaneous at a church camp. And I went to this church camp. It was up on the mountain. It was with a bunch of kids. We all believed in miracles. We all believed in the Holy Spirit. We got up
Right.
there. We raised the energy with music. So it's like worship music. We're singing. People are speaking in tongues. People are getting knocked out, you know,
Hmm.
going to other, you know, they're, I'm getting tingles now thinking about it. But it was just like, and to me, it was like a completely crazy experience because I had not been raised to do church that way at all. But you know, as I'm sitting there, long story short, I am miraculously healed of a physical ailment that I had at the time, instantaneously. I mean, undeniably, and it was crazy. Because I was just like, how did I just get healed of this physical thing, right?
Right.
Like, and I was like, but you know, the energy in that room was so thick. Like we had raised the energy
Hmm.
so much, you know, and to me that was like that was one of those moments where I was like, it became so hard for me to leave Christianity at that point because I was like, there's something to this.
Right.
But then, like as I've grown and experienced new things, I've seen the same phenomenon happen in, you know, other types of stuff. It doesn't
Hmm.
have to be Christian. It's going to be like, you know, you have like mobs of people. Okay, so there was this time where maybe you wouldn't consider this a miracle, but I squatted 400 pounds, and
Oh,
I've
wow.
never been able, yeah, and I've never been able to do it. I hadn't been able to do it leading up to that, and I've never been able to do it since. But I was with a group of people, and they were in a circle. I was like literally in a circle. They were all standing around me. They were all screaming. They were all cheering. They were all yelling. They were all feeding me their energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they put the plates on my bar, and I freaking squatted 400 pounds. And then they told me like right afterwards, you squatted 400 pounds. And I was like, no way. You know what I mean? I was like,
Right.
this was absolutely crazy. And I was like, okay. And then I've also like listened to other people talk about their experiences with telekinesis and spoon bending. So,
Mm-hmm.
like our listeners can look up spoon bending if you're not like understanding that phenomenon. But telekinesis, and what those people were telling me was like, I can't do it when I'm alone, but when I get together in a workshop with a group of people, we raise the energy and we can do it. And so I'm like, okay, what does all of this have in common? Like, if science even cared to like explore it, there's something scientific going on here, because it's like there's something about a whole bunch of people putting their energy into something as a collective to where
Mm-hmm.
it can overcome the physical.
Well, it's funny when we think about like how many times humanity has actually united and been able to even just change the minds of certain politicians or certain, you know what I'm saying? To be able to overthrow certain mindsets or cultural norms. It's like, even at that point, we totally disregard the energy that's behind that as well. And even if we like add ancestors and whatnot to that as well, because we kind of disregard the dead also. Like, I'm a medium, so I'm always thinking about the dead, but the dead
Hmm.
also put energy into things. So it's like we're all connected, we're all united, and they don't bother to go into the energy of it. They don't bother to go into why that is or why it happens. They're kind of tapping into it now, and sometimes I feel like they're slowly revealing things that they already knew. Like, you heard about them acknowledging astral projection is real like a year or two ago. When
Hmm.
I was in college studying psychology, there were several articles talking about out of body experiences that were not pathological. Which, I mean, a lot more not pathological, but we just don't talk about it. And they did say that in the research article. They were like, there could be more accounts of situations like this, but people just keep quiet about it because of how much we pathologize people that are able to do this. But when we think about like astrology as well, right? Charlie has been able to predict some crazy shit just by tracking where the planets were. And very few people know that psychology and even astronomy has its roots in astrology, right? They have their roots in astrology. We don't even see the stars anymore in our modern society. We don't. Unless you
No,
live
I
in one of those
know.
bumblefuck nowhere places, we don't. So of course they're gonna disregard the power of the planets. You can't even fucking point to where Mars is right now, right? And it's like, but the fact that you can even make predictions of the future, and even if it's not like a full prediction, it's just like a ballpark, like this could be what happens, it might not be what happens, but it more often than not happens. Or we have the history of the oracles and the prophetesses and the shamans and the medicine people that can all do the same thing. We call them all different titles, but they can all do the same thing. Well, why are they all considered mentally ill now? Why is that the case when back in the day we used to go to, and we still do, we're just more hush hush about it, we used to
Hmm.
go to them for those predictions because they were expert in India and a lot of different places in India. When the child is born, they will read the birth chart right there, or
I
within
love
like the
it.
first month of the baby being born, they'll read that. Or if they're trying to put a couple together, they will read their birth charts. Like, there's a lot of cultures that still do that. But why is it that that's considered woo woo now when we're working with the energies that are surrounding us? It's just crazy to me now to think that I disregarded astrology as inaccurate. And now I was able to pull a guy's mommy issues from his birth chart one time. He got freaked out. He was like, "How did you know my mom wasn't around?" And I'm like, "I was just reading what the planets were saying. I don't know anything about you." And they get weirded out, right? But it's like, but it's real. It's not anything like, "Oh my God," because they get scared. Like, "Oh my God, that's freaky." It's not really freaky if we all like paid attention, we don't all have to study it. We don't all have to be well versed in it, but just to respect it. Like, yeah, the planets, the energies around us, the universe has an effect on us, and it's, if you pay enough attention, you can even forecast future events or forecast what's going to happen in society. And a lot of people are capable of doing that. But why is it that that's considered crazy or evil, or you know what I'm saying? It's just
Yeah.
why can't it just be
Uh-huh.
scientific? you know why not?
Oh
And
yeah.
even kind of address the fact that the moon does affect the water cycles. Okay, so if that's not too outlandish, then why are the planets doing what they're doing so outlandish for us to believe in, right? But yeah, anyway.
Like, yeah. Hmm.
I love this topic. This is fun. Oh, so alien abductions. Okay. So from what I've kind of so there's different types of alien species, right? Some of them genuinely do abduct people just for experimentation sake. Um Now people want to judge that, oh, that's evil, but you guys act like you didn't steal ants from ant farms. Or like you didn't capture random animals and keep them in your house against their will, right? Like we've all kind of done it. There are certain species that kind of view humans in a similar light, like an under-evolved species that they're interested in learning how we work, and they
Mm-hmm.
will abduct people and then do research on them and then kind of throw them back into the wild. And a lot of people feel like they get freaked out about that, but what are we doing with zoos? You know what I'm saying? It's like we do the exact same thing. We view these other species, which I don't agree with. We view these neighboring species, is what I'll call them, as under-evolved, right? And we just want to learn about them. So yeah, in science class, we'll capture a fucking frog. Yeah, we'll dissect them. Yeah, we'll do A, B, and C, but it's not weird when we do it. But then if another
Oh yeah, well,
species
yeah. And when we do it, we actually like kill the frog, or
Mhm.
we actually harm the, creature that we are that we're learning about. We harm them. That's not a boundary. And like, I mean, we'll literally cause rats to get cancer just so we can study it. Like,
Just
it's
so we can
fucked up.
study it.
And like, I've never heard of a single story of somebody getting abducted by an alien and harmed.
Yeah, ever. Not to say that it never happens, but
Right.
more often than not, it doesn't happen, right? It's because, and this is something that we haven't mastered yet. Why is it that whenever we find new land, we start mowing down trees and we start mowing down, like, getting rid of the grass and getting rid of the animals and everything like that to make it only for us? Like, I resent the fact that I can't handle the sight of a bug sometimes. I really do. And it's like because we're so removed from nature that if an animal like a cricket happens to get, well, I'm in Southern California now, right? Like a spricket happens to get in their house, I feel like that's an intruder, totally disregarding the fact that we built this house on top of wherever they were
Yeah.
living. And it's just natural that they're going to pop up, right? And it's
Yeah.
like we still haven't learned and gathered the fact that we're supposed to live with the planet, not outside of, or not like we're some superior species or anything, because we're not. But I feel like, and I always fight this, that evolution, or the lack of belief in evolution for a lot of people, is the reason why. Like they think that, oh, a bipedal lion is so crazy. We're bipedal apes. Like, do we ever stop and think about that? We are walking, talking apes. Like Planet of the Apes. We already live in it. Like people think, oh, that was so crazy. We live in that right now. We are the apes. We are the Planet of the Apes right now. But we don't want to believe that. Like we want to believe that we're superior. So if I were to tell you, oh yeah, there's amphibious, I don't know how to put amphibious humanoid species that live in the ocean. Well, that sounds crazy. Well, how does it sound fucking crazy? We're literally walking, talking apes. Where we can trace the evolution from when we were on all fours to when we walked on 2 feet to when we were animals that had eyes to the side of our heads to when it started going to the front. Like all of these things, there's a word for that, I just can't think of it right now, but all of these things that we've done as a species that we're so disconnected from, aliens don't sound that crazy when you accept the fact that you are literally a walking, talking ape. You are in the
Yeah.
Planet of the Apes right now, and you don't realize how crazy you might look to an amphibious humanoid because you're a walking, fucking, talking monkey. It's just like, you know what I'm saying? It's like for them, it's just
Yeah.
like,
No,
yeah,
I know. It's one of the things that makes me laugh when people refer to animals as if we're not animals.
that's what
Like
gets me.
animals as in, inferior life forms. Like you are literally just another species. Like they're a different species than you. So you're getting into speciesism, which is like, oh, if that's a video that I made that I haven't uploaded, because I was talking about speciesism and veganism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Hot topic. Trigger.
Period.
Yeah. But yeah. I haven't uploaded it because I was like, you know what, I can make it better, because my partner listened to it and he was like, I feel like you're not, like, he said it was hard for him to follow. So I'm like, okay, I feel like I need to go back and like, you know clarify some of my arguments. By the way, I wasn't saying everybody should be vegan, but I was pointing out a lot of different stuff. And
Yeah.
honestly, speciesism is a big, like, I think the whole like movement towards eating less meat, which, veganisms have led the way, or vegans have kind of led the way towards that.
Right.
Or like in Hindu culture, or like this was something that too that I talked about, the phenomenon of the connection between spiritually um, focused people and reduction of meat consumption. Um, it comes down to speciesism and recognizing other life forms as deserving our respect.
Absolutely. Or viewing hunting as a form of violence. And it's funny that you mentioned that because my guys are always telling me, like, it's time to stop eating meat or it's time to at least limit it. And I have limited it, but I don't eat a lot as it is. But their reasoning is because of meat production. They say that. They're like, it's funny because they
Yeah,
don't necessarily talk about the nonviolent thing, but I think I told you in our personal conversation that my guides are a lot more on the scientific front than they are on like they do care about like nonviolence and stuff like that too, but more often than not, they're more about the planet, right? So they'll tell me, and oh girl, I learned why they don't care about the crystals too, but I'll get to that later.
Ooh,
They
so
were,
curious.
yeah, it's the way that, anyway, the same reason about the meat is the reason about the crystals, right? It's the way that our species has decided to get it is hurting the
Right,
planet or hurting
right.
people or whatever the case might be. So it's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
the reality of it is that you consider yourself such a superior species. You're intelligent enough to glean protein or understand that protein comes from different places and different things, but you're not intelligent enough to understand that back when you were living in the forest, you would only eat meat once every blue moon because you had to actually, oh, I don't know, go out and actually hunt the fucking animal. And you guys would have that meat and you didn't have refrigeration like that. So you weren't going
yeah,
to have meat 3 times a day. You weren't going to have it. It was very much on a need basis, right? And some cultures learn how to pickle it. Some cultures learn how to do this, learn how to do that. But the fact of the matter is that nowadays in today's society, you guys are mass producing things. You're mass producing shit, and you're totally disregarding the reason why certain cultures have died off, certain species have died off. Why you guys almost died off on multiple occasions is because of a lack of resources. You're not paying attention to that. So their thing about meat right now is very much to do with the planet. It's like meat
right.
production. Why are there more chickens than you? Chickens aren't even that smart. Why are there more chickens than you? And think about this, we're not eating all of this food, so a lot of this food goes to waste. And then what ends up happening with the waste, you get what I'm saying? Where do they put all of this shit? With the
Yeah,
trash and the wasted food and all of this, a lot of the stuff that we do is totally depleting our resources that we need. And what we don't understand, and this is where like religious people, no offense, but like where they kind of go into the fear mentality is, oh, the end of the world. Well, what is the end of the world really? Right? You're talking about it like it's like the end of the planet or the end of whatever. No, the end of our society. What if it's just that, right? So many natural disasters that we have to rebuild society from the ground up. That's not foreign to the Earth's history. But we don't know enough about the Earth's history. We're not taught human history. We're taught our geographical history. But we need to be taught human history, the earth, the planet's history, because we're all humans and we all live on the same fucking planet. And it's like, if we were to all
yeah,
know about these natural cycles, like some people like, oh, global warming is a natural cycle. No, the fuck it's not. No, not as quickly as it's happened. It's very specifically been expedited since the beginning of industrialism. That's only about 150 to 200 years ago. That means that in a short amount of time, we've been able to skyrocket our carbon emissions. So we need to address our behavior. But we're thinking, oh, it's just something that's making our life easier. Well, okay, but is it though? If we're putting our entire society and our survival at risk, then just being able to, I don't know, flick a light on or being able to, get some beef at a restaurant or whatever, eat some salmon, right? Like you guys are talking about, oh, I'm afraid of these animals attacking me. Well, keep depleting their food source. Find out, and it's not going to be, oh, the orcas have gone mad. No, they don't have any food. They don't have any food. And what is an animal going to do? We would do the same thing to survive, right? Bugs provide us lots of protein. Why don't we eat those? Oh, because we think it's gross. Well, they're protein and they're abundant. right? So it's like, why is it that we don't have more cricket powder? That sounds really crazy. I know it sounds crazy, but there are cultures that do it. And we
Yeah.
have more bugs than we do other animals, but of course, without depleting the resource. But they are a fantastic source of protein. If not that, then beans. But we still have to be balanced with that, right? Because if we make massive bean farms and we're still going to deplete the fucking land. So it's like we have to find how to make this work. In my opinion, it's bringing gardening back into the schools. Number one, horticulture should be something that every single human being should know how to do, right? Because you need to understand how to make a plant grow. You need to understand how to kill a plant. You need to understand that these resources are not indefinite and that you do have to maintain homeostasis in nature to be able to survive in her, right? And that's
Right. It all
something that,
come. Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
no, it's the same thing that you're probably going to say. It's just we have to understand that it comes back to us, that we owe a responsibility to the planet. So what we do has repercussions, whether you like it or not. And it's just humorous to me, and this is going to sound so shady, that people can hunt rhinos and hunt elephants for their tusks and whatnot and totally deplete the earth and think they're still going to heaven. I just think that's hilarious to me because I'm just kind of like, okay, but what you did was disregard the planet that your God gave you. The biggest gift that you were given outside of your body is the planet, because the planet is how you survive, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you can't
I think.
regard that, hmm?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I mean that was it, honestly.
I was just gonna say, well, I mean, it all comes back to the original statement. Like the what I was gonna say or what I said in my video too about meat consumption is the exact same thing that you're saying and that you said at the beginning, where it all comes back to us being out of touch with nature.
Hmm.
Like if you're gonna go out and hunt an animal, you're in touch with nature. You're in touch
Right.
with 100% with what you're doing. Like that animal, you've experienced that animal alive, and now
Hmm.
you're going to eat it. Like that is as in touch with nature as it gets. Like,
Exactly. And I
and
feel like
to understand and honor that energy transfer.
I was gonna
You know what
say
I'm
that too.
saying? Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like it's so easy to view a sentient being as being insignificant when you're not the one that's either shooting the gun or shooting the arrow or whatever the case might be. You're not the one actually chasing to get the animal. And you could feel the animal's energy unless you're a fucking psychopath. Like there are people that are like that. But I'm assuming that anybody that's hunted an animal has felt at least a tinge of remorse because you're literally chasing it. You are chasing that living being that's running for its life to avoid your grasp. And of course, it's part of nature, right? They do it with bears, they do it with lions, they do it with everything. You're the lion in that point in time, right? But it's like being as intelligent as we are, you have to feel some sort of remorse when you do that. But we don't have that anymore. It's just give me more chicken, give me more of this. I expect this to be at the store now. When there was that chicken shortage during the beginning of the pandemic, people were cracking me the fuck up. They were cracking me up because I was just kind of like, y'all really don't understand how
My
any of this
gosh.
shit works. You know what I mean? I'm
I
like,
was
you.
laughing because I was vegetarian, like straight up, like I think I was Mike actually vegan at the time.
Yeah.
So I was just laughing at everybody because I was like, haha, the price of chicken's gone up. Yeah, because guess what? They're living beings that you're killing. I'm sorry if you expect to eat them 3 times a day. Like,
Yeah, right. Literally. And then to think of, we talk about energy transfer. Well, if you ate a chicken that was mass produced in a cage and it didn't get to, and the fact that they even advertise like,
oh
oh,
yeah.
grass fed meat or free roaming or whatever, I'm like, okay, that's just concerning on its own. Because then what was the other option? You know what I'm saying? It's like think about the energy transfer with an animal that was mistreated, right? We
Oh
think about
yeah.
all the
Oh
time,
yeah.
oh, my aunt died with this trauma and she never forgave so and blah 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 blah, right? Well, what's to say that these animals that we're violently attacking and mass producing and mistreating for our own convenience sake doesn't transfer into us? What if everybody's angry because of the meat that we're eating? That sounds crazy, I know. But is it crazy? We think about it.
No,
Think
it's
about the
it's
living.
absolutely it's absolutely not crazy. It's not. I have definitely, and I think that that's another thing too that I'm going to make a shout out to my girl on YouTube, Bahati Life, because she has talked about
Oh, I
this a
love
lot, and I
her.
oh my gosh, I love her. Okay, so
She's
she
so
she has
cute.
talked about she makes this YouTube video. She's done a couple about meat, I feel like. But she did this video about where she talks about how she ate this fish, and basically she was experiencing the energy transfer of like the fish's trauma to herself. And she was
Hmm.
talking about how, like, especially if you are like a psychic, if you're an empath, if you're somebody who is sensitive to energy at all, period, like you will, have this a lot of the time natural aversion to meat because you understand that the way that we are like exploiting the planet, especially as it pertains to, harvesting animals as resources for our consumption, is doing so in such a way that it's the like the traumatization. It's like the Holocaust of the like farm
No,
animals,
literally, it
you know?
is. It is.
So, and to be ingesting that energy into your body, like you need to have awareness of what you're doing. Like it, it's a
Well, it's
physical energy
funny.
transfer. I mean, that's why we eat. Like,
Well, and tying back into our topic of alien abduction, because it's definitely we're still talking about that, you guys. The whole reason why aliens are so outlandish to us, or the idea of them being so outlandish to us, we can't even gather the fact that we could transfer trauma from dead chickens and cows. Okay, we're not even regarding the fact that we're walking, talking primates. Like, it sounds crazy because of how disconnected we are from the earth. Aliens are not that crazy of an idea, in my opinion. Okay,
right.
we all have our own opinion, but to me, it's really not that crazy. When you look at the universe's history, the planet's history, but it also makes sense as to why they're not revealing themselves to everyone when we can't even get to the same consensus of our own carbon footprint, much fucking less, right?
Yeah.
Understanding intelligent beings or life forms that might even exceed our intelligence from other realms or other planets or even other universes, because there's a certain species I'm not going to mention that come from a different universe, but I'm going to leave that alone. But we can't even understand that. But then you also have to wonder, all these movies talking about aliens and shit, well, where do they get that random idea for? Are they just making it up out of nowhere? Right? Like Star Trek, Star Wars, all this random shit where space travel and, interspecies communication and all of that shit is just so normal. Right? And there's like one Star Trek where, I don't know, they were on a different planet and they accidentally revealed themselves, or the ship or whatever the fuck, and they ended up getting back to the base. And the captain was grilled and he was like, they haven't even invented the wheel yet in that civilization. And you totally destroyed their reality, right? They weren't ready to perceive what you showed them at all. And because of your negligence, now they have to somehow fathom how the fuck that happened, right? It's sort of like
Mm.
worshiping like a piece of the shit. But that's kind of where we're at in their perspective, which is crazy because my guides kind of make it seem like we should be way past there. They're just kind of like, but they're just kind of like, okay, well, we'll work with what we're working with. But it's like, it's not that crazy to think about aliens, but we're so detached from nature that we don't think that aliens are natural. It
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
we get to the same consensus that aliens are just as natural as us going from being chimpanzees to being Homo sapiens, well, then maybe we could have more connections and maybe we could exceed faster, whatever the case might be. But we're so disconnected, even from the stars, that all of this seems so crazy. Like, what, are you for real? And it's like, yeah, it's not that wild. It's like, what about spacecraft? Yeah, that's perfectly plausible if we actually focus on it enough.
Yeah. I most of the people that I know that are skeptical of aliens, nobody is saying that it's not possible, but they'll project it out into like this future or this possibility or this potential. They'll completely ignore the fact that these things are already here. Right? So
Exactly.
it's kind of interesting because it's like they at that same time they can allow themselves to like hold a like sort of egotistical perspective of themselves that says like, oh yeah, I'm open-minded. Oh yeah, this is totally possible, while at the same time being in complete denial of it. That's what I
Yeah,
see a lot. That's what
exactly.
I see the most of. Um,
Exactly.
is that.
This is just crazy to think about. We really talking about aliens right now. It's just so natural to me. I'm just like, it's not that crazy. It ain't that crazy. The science and the technology might be kind of crazy, yeah, but like this is all shit that we've also imagined and put in our movies. So is it really that crazy? Is
There's this
it?
one doc. Yeah, there's this one documentary that I watched that was like it was talking about I think it was Area 51 or something like that. The guy who what was his name? It basically like the guy who like escaped from they were doing like they had found like an alien spacecraft and they were doing experiments on it to try and understand how it got here. And anyway, he escaped from it. This was in Arizona. He escaped, like he left it and he started like telling people about it because he felt some type of way about the morality of what they were doing to, I don't know, the aliens they had or something. I can't remember. But anyway, he came out about it and of course he was like completely demonized and made to be crazy. But
Right.
what they were learning was, well, first of all, there was an element that the aliens had that we don't have on Earth. And that
Right.
was one thing that they were really curious about. And then the other thing was that he was saying that the way that the spacecraft worked, that the way that it got there was, and they still hadn't figured it out exactly how they were doing it, but it was basically like they were somehow collapsing gravity. And so they were creating some type of like gravitational, and it also had to do with time, like warping time and gravity, and creating a hole. And then the spacecraft actually would fall into it. And he
Um,
kind of went into like some detail about it because he was a scientist, which, you know, I'm not a scientist that studies, you know, space time, and, you know, the physical elements is, it's not really my specialty, but he was giving, you know, pretty specific information about like how it was that they were theorizing that the aliens were doing this, because that was in fact what they found out they were doing, was they were bending gravity and time, and then they were creating a hole and then they were falling into that hole, and that's how they could get so fast physically from like one place to another.
right. Exactly.
Like
And even thinking
uh
about that being real, it's like, fuck, wait, what? You could do that? Yeah,
but I mean,
you could
yeah,
do
I mean, I
that.
even think, you know, I even think that the government knows that the world isn't ready for this, because like why are they hiding it?
Yeah, exactly.
You
Well,
know, I don't
sometimes
know.
I wonder, like, if our government has had like an energetic shift, and like before they were being really like authoritarian, like, no, you can't. It's only for us. And I feel like now, if that was the case in the past, that they're kind of inching into the, it'd probably be better for the species as an entirety if we kind of just opened up about this, because they opened up that whole those UFO files in the it was like the Pentagon or some shit like that. They finally released the UFO records they've been keeping private for so long. It's been more of a topic of discussion. I feel like they're kind of spoon feeding people into it to where it becomes more of a discussion, to where we kind of start slowly. Okay, but what if this is real? I mean, what if it is possible? Because I do agree with you. Like, they've been like withholding this information, which, like I said, to me is just second nature. Like, obviously, just release the shit. But maybe people aren't ready. Maybe they're not entirely ready for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like the information that I was going to share earlier, and then I was like, there was something in me there. It was like I was getting this little nudge, like, don't share it. It's not ready. They're not
No,
ready.
same.
I
I've had a couple of those.
was
I'm
like,
like,
okay.
wait.
It's so
I
hard
love
because I don't,
this.
I'm not a Scorpio. It's not in my nature to keep a secret. I'm just like, oh, I found this out. Gonna
It's
let me
so funny.
broadcast it.
It's okay. I feel like I struggle. I don't struggle with secrets per se, but like if I get really excited about something and I'm passionate about it, I'm like, no, everybody has to know about this. And I'm like, wait a minute, maybe I don't even think about whether somebody can process the information yet. I'm just like, no, it's the truth. You just have to know it. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm
Yeah.
traumatized.
Okay, well, Nanda, thank you so much for sharing. I feel like this has been incredibly enlightening, honestly, when it comes to like aliens. I feel like you've tied in like a whole bunch of different like topics to me, and I'm so glad that my clients like wanted you to come back and talk about this because it's been honestly like the best. So, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Thanks for being cool with my weirdness, y'all.
Bye.
Bye.